Yes. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the DCOMparty. Everybody say hello. Good.
Hello.
Hey.
On camera at once, but you know what? We're all going to say hi. So everyone say hi.
Hey.
Hey, hi.
Welcome to the DCOMparty. Thank you all so much for joining us on YouTube and and for all three of you with me. So this is a very different kind of episode. As you all know, the show is a baby. We've only had one episode last week, but with everything with the Black Lives Matter movement, we want to make sure that we are using this platform for good and for change. Today, we are talking about the movie The Color of Friendship, which of course was on our radar and is going to be in our rundown, but we have to talk about it now because this is the most timely way to do it. And I'm sure we've all had conversations with those we agree with this week, with those who don't agree with us, and hearing story after story. And there are so many layers to this conversation. But we want to tell the story through a very specific artistic lens through The Color of Friendship. And so, because we feel like maybe this could be one streamlined way to grow an even bigger conversation. So I have my lovely friends here. They are my coworkers. So we actually work for a company where we give study skill seminars to middle schoolers and high schoolers across all 5 boroughs of New York City. So we definitely have that New York City lens for sure. And so with the movie, we are going to ask 4 main questions that take specific parts of the movie and how we can relate it to today. And we want to keep this as seriously lighthearted as possible because we feel like it could just make everything a little easier. And I do want to apologize. I know we promoted today's show to be about the Ryan Merriman catalog, but this is really about helping our friends in the Black community and what we can do. So we have Lydia Viano.
Hello, how is everyone?
Plaza, yes.
Hello.
We are all artistic. They are Brooklyn girls, born and raised, and they're just wonderful, amazing people who can definitely help us. And we had Devonte, but Devonte is gone. I don't know if I'm sure he'll come back. The first question, hi ladies, is how are you feeling today with everything going on?
I'm doing pretty okay. No complaints. It's beautiful. The nicer the weather gets, the happier I get. So I'm pretty all right.
Lydia, how are you doing?
I agree. I think I'm doing pretty okay, you know, regarding circumstances in today's world. But I feel like as long as everybody stays safe, stays well, everything should be fine. But yeah, I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah, I'm very glad to hear that. And Devonte he's on his way back. Let me see. Hey, Devonte, we lost you for a sec.
Sorry about that.
Well, so we're just basically saying how everyone's doing. So how are you doing today?
I am doing really well. It's like nice outside, so I definitely took like a walk and definitely just ate really well too. So I'm good.
Yeah, good. And Devonte is a spoken word artist as well, and he is a huge he's an amazing person. You are all a light in our lives, and I appreciate you so much for coming on the show today. But let's just dive right in. So today's show is going to only go until 2:45, so we can keep it as concise as possible. Even though like all of this deserves like 3-hour conversations. But here we go. So the first question. Well, first of all, I should really say what the movie's about, shouldn't I? So The Color of Friendship it came out in the year 2000, and it's actually a true story, which I did not remember growing up because I first saw the movie when I was 4 years old. Basically, it's about a white teenager. She's 14. Her name is Mari Bach, who lives in South Africa, and her father is a police officer in South Africa. She wants to be an exchange student to the United States, and she goes there. And she stays with a real person, Congressman Ron Dellums, who fought to end apartheid in Africa. So she gets there, and the way she was raised was that like she didn't accept Black people for who they are because where she grew up, they were oppressed and they had to have passes to go from city to city to work, and they were just under a very, very close watch. Whereas in the United States, like Blacks and whites could go to the mall together, like as we saw in the movies, and no one could be discriminated against. So when she first gets to the United States with Dellum's family, she thinks it's a joke at first, pretty much, and she doesn't think that like this isn't how I was raised. It's very confusing. And of course, the family was confused as well, and they're like, well, she's a white teenager. Kind of, they're afraid like how it goes against what Dellums is fighting for. So it's a whole question of how people perceive each other. But as the story goes on, we see that it's conversations between people, and especially with young people, that can really make a difference in each other's lives. And there are more things that get into it, especially with police brutality. That's a huge issue that's discussed, because it starts off with the father saying how they got Stephen Biko, who we find out later was killed by the police in South Africa, but they tried to spin the story that Stephen Biko killed himself. But of course, it was later revealed in the media that was not true. So when it comes to police brutality in the media, that story was in 1977. The movie came out in 2000. Now it's 2020, and this is still a huge issue. So, and the fact that this movie was on Disney Channel, children's programming, says a lot. So there's so many aspects of the story that we're going to talk about. So, Lydia, I want to ask you the first question. Now, this is about, and because we all work with children, a lot of these questions are geared toward children as well. So in the movie, we were introduced to two books that Mari was reading at the Dellums house. The first one was Roots by Alex Haley, which hopefully most Americans know. Maybe this is the only real book or movie that we've really been exposed to, which is a problem. And the other book was called Cry the Beloved Country by Alan Patton. So although we learn about oppression of African Americans in our literature classes, it's still very limited. Because African Americans were separated from, their main source. They were separated from people in their country, and their source of identity and their history as well. So, how do you think educators can better teach the fullness of African American history or the Black history before slavery? How do you think educators can change that?
Well, that's actually a really interesting question. So I remember when I was growing up, when I was in, school, not college, but, when I was middle school, elementary school, I learned about slavery. I learned about civil rights. I learned about segregation, but I feel like that's where it stopped. I feel like I didn't learn anything else about Black history. I didn't learn about Black scientists. I didn't learn about Black scholars. I didn't learn about I would say positive Black images other than slavery and segregation and stuff like that. And I feel like it was always a section. It was always just a chapter. Yeah. It wasn't really we're going to teach you about this all year long, or we're going to bring this up somehow throughout the school year. So I feel like, I don't know, it's just really important for, us to learn about Black history throughout the entire school year, or just in different forms. Get books written by Black people. You know what I mean? Have kids know that there wasn't only just white scholars or Black white inventors, or also people of a whole bunch of different backgrounds that were successful. So I feel like I didn't learn about that. I didn't know that anybody else that wasn't white could be successful. Yeah.
Erika, how about you? What do you think? Well, just as far as because the sense of identity is lost for so many African Americans. Let's say you have Asian Americans versus people born in different parts of this country. They don't know exactly where they came from and where their ancestors came from. Now, there are so many. The information is out there, somewhere, whether it's through a collegiate study or just a very niche thing. But do you think it's possible that you have a broader source of African American history?
Yes. Just the same way we're taught about the serfs and all these other European, these are things that are taught to us from day one. And then Liz was saying, we get these little bits and pieces here and there, and the education stops after maybe segregation ends, right? But we tend to look at it oh, that was then, and I didn't connect it when I was learning it in high school, right. To the fact that it's an ongoing issue. I think it's possible to broaden it. However, they have entire like college courses based on African history, and it is complex because even before like the scramble for Africa, where European countries were colonizing Africa, what like European people have been in Africa way before like the 1800s and have been like colonizing parts of it, and a lot of that history is lost. I'm currently in the process of trying to up my sources because you really do have to read a lot, and I think we should have honestly we should have a mandatory African history professor in schools, like I think in high schools, middle schools, and everybody should be run through one of those classes like way before you get to college level education, which is honestly where I started learning a lot of the history.
Yes, yeah. So basically, it's just having like equal, it's across the board, more like diversity. And what do you say?
Oh, no, I was just saying, like, sometimes I feel like a lot of the truth that should be out there is sometimes hidden because we might just be reminded of some of the evils that were done over the years. And I think, like, if anything, there's like tends to be like ignorance on both sides.
Yeah.
So like if you don't know anything at all, you wouldn't question why people are angry, or because in someone's head, be like, okay, there's laws for this, for equal justice, and everything's fine, but it's all about like the roots of everything. How did racism come about? How did discrimination come about? And what are some of the things that are hidden that might like still be stopping us from progressing just in life in general? So
Right. Well, that can actually lead to like a media question. I actually had a question from my mom, and so just with like trying to level the playing field in like, every single way, it's like how do you think the media should like explain these problems? Because just like what happened in the movie, like people can choose their information, they can choose the facts that they want. But do you think maybe like having like an anchor like of POC like telling certain stories versus like a white person telling certain stories of that specific race, like would make a difference?
Even in terms of like media?
Yeah.
The tough thing about media is in our society, and I guess every country has its issues with like media. We are so like about getting clicks, and a lot of the time our media is more about getting views and being exciting than talking about what the facts are, and just trying to hit like the next biggest story. And so I think to even really start to improve the information we get, it's almost like a priority shift for our media, honestly, I think.
Of course. Well, I think maybe another problem is that people from both, like, well, at least from like my family side that I can speak of, people take in this information as such with a voice of panic, and like they're afraid of feeling oppressed themselves. That's why people really say like all lives matter or blue lives matter, but they're not focusing on the one thing that they're trying to talk about. You know, like right, is like what we're trying to do is highlight this specific issue that's happening. So people say, oh, the liberal media this, liberal media that, but it's not that. And journalism, I think the job is to give a voice to the voiceless. And in this particular case, this is what is happening. You know, so take this one thing, and it's our job to look at other like places for information too. Because like, with this specific story, there are like 6 different sides of it we can name right now about that. Because we have peaceful protesters who are getting we're suffering from police brutality right now. You know, because like people are peaceful, and then there are cops like spraying tear gas and using bullets for no reason. No one's attacking them. But then you also see people who like are looting like other businesses when like we have to understand why. Number one, we have to understand why they're looting those businesses, because that's the bigger problem. You know, that's a whole other. Yeah, but to go back to the movie though, just with media, let me get back to this one question. So in 1977 in the movie, you learned that this Nico killed himself when it was later revealed that it was the cop who killed him. In this time with fake news and social media, what are sources that you look for accurate information? And do you think it's the younger generations like Piper, Mari, that know how to navigate it better? So two-parter there.
I feel like,
yeah.
I feel like our generation we're doing so good. I feel like we are so smart. I feel like we're really killing it. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like we, like, personally, with me, I know media is the same thing what Erika said. Media does this thing where they want to get the most clicks as possible, right? Like, they want to put anything in the title, they want to say anything about a story. But I tend to look at pages that are run by people of color, or pages that don't really have that much of a problematic history by, lying about certain things. Because, like, let's take example, Fox News, right? Fox News is known to be like more conservative. I don't be watching Fox News because I'm like, I know I'm not gonna agree with what they say. So instead of like just sticking to one media outlet, I just really look at what I see on social media, because social media is like opinions from every single side. You know what I mean? Like, I can get opinion from a liberal, I can get an opinion from a conservative, and then from there I'm like, okay, cool. I see, how the story was pieced together by different people. You know what I mean? I feel like it's really interesting to see the different perspectives on the same story by different outlets. Because I'm like, who do you believe? You know what I mean? Like, who are you going to, at the end of the day, be like, you know what? I think this is what happened. So I feel like it's really interesting because, we all have different views.
Yeah. Do you guys also look to social media as well, perhaps more than other regular news organizations?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I know I don't have one specific one, but I try to look for like articles that are balanced. So even if you are advocating for a certain set of people or for laws, like, I want to see both sides. And if you're all the way on one side, I'm going to be like, you know what? I don't find that you're trustworthy, or I won't think that you're honest enough. So I'll leave that alone. But my thing is, even if I'm looking for support for something that I'm really passionate about, I want to make sure that you are speaking not just to me, but you are also balanced when you're talking about that topic, in this case, racism, or our people, Black people,
Yeah, I tend to look at a lot of just on social media, especially for this stuff that's going on, because we have friends that are in protests. Like, I get to see people on live, so there's nothing like seeing it like that. Because when I'm sorry, Donald Trump had said, it's just so funny to think about like how you can really portray a situation. And he said New York City was a loss to the looters, right? And I thought that was so funny because somebody outside of New York, or somebody outside the US might be like, oh my gosh, everything's in flames over there right now. But we're able to just go outside. It's like, it's almost like a regular day. So, but it is important, I think, to read all different sources because you have to just to pick out what are the facts. I look at BBC, and then I'll look at New York Times. Like, to me, those are like really classic, like just classic, real easy to read, straightforward the sources for me. And then I do look at a lot of like Black owned media because I trust that they're doing their research, and it usually checks out with me. So
yeah, well, that raises it's so interesting you guys say that, because in a way it's very concerning, because every media organization should be trusted, but I think maybe a huge problem is that from the top, there are certain things that we do for ratings, for clicks, or for just to get certain people on their side, but that's not what storytelling is about, and it's interesting that you all look at it in that way. And as far as social media goes, those are the anecdotes. Those things happening in real time. Nothing's doctored. There's no really other commentary about it. It's just the video. And you can decide what matters. But it's so interesting because people they choose the facts, they pick one thing, and they don't feel the need to look at other places. So, and it comes from taking all these different pieces of information from every different source that people look at and taking all of them and having a conversation with somebody one-on-one. Like, would you guys agree that that's how change happens? That's kind of that was a very like loaded question there. Yeah, it all comes down to having these kinds of conversations. Would you agree?
Yeah.
I didn't mean to lead the question there, but yeah, I think that's basically what it comes down to. But we have to know how people look at it, and it's interesting because like just look at like Black, specifically like Black like organizations versus like versus Fox. You know, that's a problem. That's a problem. There should never be a divide in that way. So interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Now this is a more film, like just film world question. I noticed that Piper, who was one of the protagonists in the story, she was Delim's daughter, has a lighter complexion than her younger brothers and her friend Daniel, who was from Nigeria. Is that correct? So, and it seems that there's a trend in African American females with lighter skin, how the protagonists. So, is that something that you've noticed?
Definitely.
Yeah. Just repeat the question one more time. I'm sorry.
Well, do you notice, or do you feel like that's a trend in movies?
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah, but it's been like, to be honest with you, it's been a trend for years, which is why you see like private companies or private institutions trying to get more of Black women of darker skin complexion out there, because that light skin complexion, kind of like fantasizing that goes all the way back to like slavery, you know?
Right.
And like this is just a quick story about it. Like, slave masters would basically rape their slaves, and the children would come out lighter complexion, and they would be able to have certain freedoms or certain privileges, I should say, where they would get to be inside inside of the house, and that's where like darker skinned slaves, they were like, okay, this person has privilege. They are kind of like higher than me, even though they were all still slaves, type of thing. So like even from then, it's like we put the lighter skin complexion Black girl on a pedestal, and it never stopped from there. It's like, she's the one that we want to date. She's the one that we want in our movies because she represents what true beauty is, you know? Doesn't mean it's right, but that's where it kind of stems from.
Yeah.
I
Lydia.
completely agree. Yeah, I was thinking about that question, and one thing that I can, off the top of my head, can relate it to is taking account like Latin America, right? So you guys know what telenovelas are? Right. Yeah, so they're like soap operas and stuff. So in Mexico, they're really like popular. But the thing with that is when you're watching them, you're realizing, wait, these don't look like Mexican people. They look like white people, because there's white Mexicans out here. You know what I mean? So it's really interesting because rarely will you ever see like a Mexican indigenous looking person playing a part in a soap opera. You know what I mean? It's because, you know, it's what's more pleasing on the eye for the viewer to see, you know, a European feature, and, you know, they're just what everybody wants to see, you know? So I feel like colorism is a really big issue. It's a really big issue.
Yeah. Well, do you feel like there's a difference between colorism and racism, or are they the same?
No, they're different. Yeah. I think they're different, but colorism is like more within each, it's like more within each race, like, and more between the people, you know, that same race of people. And racism is more something that is about it being institutionalized and more of the system of oppression. And then colorism is kind of like a subcategory of that, like a little off spin that happens because of that. And I wanted to add to what Devonte said. When I was in high school, I had a teacher, and she, one of my history teachers, and she was saying, you know, before American slavery had began, the color Black was never like, it was never a bad color. Like, it was always, you know, it was never, it was when it came to America that it became synonymous with like dirty or unclean or, you know, stuff like that. And that really has, like Devonte said, changed our definition of beauty. I even heard, I don't know if anybody here saw the movie Crazy Rich Asians.
Yeah.
I love that movie. It was fun. I liked it. But I did see an article. I wouldn't have noticed or thought about it myself, but I heard that a huge problem with that movie was that I think the family, the rich family, was from Singapore, which is closer to the equator. So the people there are actually a little bit tan, like a little bit more dark. But in the movie, everybody's like white Asian, like way lighter. I didn't notice it. I mean, I wouldn't have really thought about it, but I thought that was really interesting how, that colorism thing really rears its head in like a lot of cultures.
Definitely, yeah, and it's so interesting because I feel like an argument that many people make is like, well, at least like the stories are being told. At least the movie was made, but it's not enough because there's always a story behind the story about things like that. That's why those articles are necessary. Even though because it's such a newer idea, where we just want to deny it. It's like no, like well, it's fine. The story was told. Who cares? Because even going back to the Temptations well, for example, like the way I was raised, like I absolutely love those music and those bands, and all of my Christmas albums, like was Ella Fitzgerald, like all these like beautiful, like wonderful, like Black artists. But then I find out later that they were there to make white people happy, and that's messed up. You know what I mean? So it's hard because you want to enjoy these things, but you also need to know the background as well. And I think that's why a lot of people just turn the news off because like, all right, I get it. But you don't get it yet. You have to keep talking. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's okay. All right, next question. Okay, so this is kind of regarding to our experiences with our job. So racism is taught at an early age, which we just discussed. And in the movie, I'm estimating it took about a month's time in some uncomfortable conversations for Piper and Mari to teach each other like everything about their culture and see eye to eye and show compassion for each other. But this movie shows that even though it takes a while, it's the young people who make the difference. So through our experiences at the schools, have you been a part of conversations about racial discrimination, good or bad? Or have you noticed anything that you want to talk about?
You mean like within the schools themselves, like across?
Yeah, like within the classroom. Is there anything you noticed that that either furthered tolerance and acceptance, or things that even went the opposite way?
I think schools are working a little bit harder to work diversity into the classroom. I see more of a call for it on the teachers' standpoint. I've been in so many different classrooms where you see like this room is dedicated to Black history. So I've seen that. On other levels, I've seen the effects of some of the institutionalized racism and like urban planning, and you get certain schools in more impoverished neighborhoods where the students don't have much, and they kind of feel like it's pointless. Like this whole thing is pointless because they have a ton of other things to worry about that they shouldn't be worried about, but it's all due to the circumstances that they are put in. But I do generally see more of a call to diversity amongst like in schools, because it was never like, I mean, when I was in high school, this stuff wasn't as like, not it wasn't as pressing or as pertinent, but it just, we weren't very vocal about, it wasn't made a priority. But I'm feeling that like a lot more in these schools.
Cool.
Yeah, I think for me, it's like, I see like the disparities. It's like you go to one school and it's mainly either like Black and Latinos, and it's kind of like the resources are not there, and you can see that the kids are frustrated because they're extremely intelligent kids. They want to do well, but the thing is, the resources that they were dealt with, and not to say that they just ended up with it, like they were actually like they were born into this, and it's a struggle for them because they're like, okay, I can't go to a good school, I can't get this program, I can't get that program, and as a result, you can see that they struggle just in life as because of it. And I just think when I go to other schools, for example, I went to a school near where I live, and they had so many resources, and it was like predominantly white, and they had tea and all this kind of stuff and a cafe, and I was like, wow, you know.
Mhm.
You look at all these things, then when you go to school, certain schools, it's kind of like they don't have any of this. Like they can't even get like a sports program sometimes, you know. So that's what kind of like hurts me the most, because we should be able to give that to them as well.
Right. Well, have you had any students mention that in any of your classes, or gotten into
They
any
mentioned,
conversations? We're not supposed to at work, by the way. We're supposed to be very with our lesson plan, but you know, we end up having
well, it's not a conversation I had. They just told me by themselves, like,
Yeah.
you know. So let's call it that. Anyway, they were like, I don't understand the school system. This is not set up for me. Even the way they teach and all that, it's like, how am I supposed to learn? It doesn't even help me to access my gifts as an individual. A lot of them wanted to participate in different trades. Like, what about engineering and all these kind of stuff? Like, this is the things that we want to do. Or learning about finances. These are things that they would love, but they just don't get in school. They feel like they're learning things that sometimes don't even help them in the future. So.
right, and they're kids, you know, like they need the best resources they can get. So hopefully things will change.
Yeah.
Lydia.
I can't exactly recount like a specific time where I've like experienced something like that, but to basically back off what Devonte and Erika said about, you know, certain neighborhoods and the resources that schools have. Like, I feel like doing what we do, we really do see that, because it's like we compare different schools in different neighborhoods, and you're like, wow, it's crazy how these systems are set up in a certain type of way. I don't want to say it, but like really just to make it more difficult for like Black and brown people to succeed. You know what I mean? It's like they don't get the resources that they should be getting. They literally did nothing wrong other than live in an impoverished community. And because of that, it's not, their property tax isn't given into their public school system. They're not getting what they need. They deserve new books, cleaning up the area, like clean water, stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like basic human necessities are just lacking. And it's crazy to see that, because it's like, wow, that really sucks. That from you know, when you're a child, you're little, you're just growing up to constantly have obstacles be put in your way.
Of course, right. Well, I kind of wanted to maybe share one of my experiences with you and see what you guys think about it. So of course, like with I'm the whitest chick, you probably know. A lot of people. And I want so much to relate to the students, but sometimes like it's harder to really make that impression off the bat. And I never want to bring up, let's say, I never want to bring up, you know, Tupac, and then they'll make fun of me for it. It's like, well, how do you know Tupac? Like, so, but it's funny. I'm wondering if there's anything you should never say to you guys. So for example, on social media, I am seeing a lot of people, including myself, put the black heart emoji. Let's say a white person reaches out to you and says, like, I hope you're okay. Like, if they want to talk to you about everything to be a better ally, should they put that black heart or not? What
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I just feel like I don't know if it's, you know, emojis like that. It's different. It's not like you're putting a black fist, you know.
Yeah,
it's a little bit different. Like, I don't know. It's like, I feel like it's just supporting the movement. Did somebody say something like, "Oh, that's not for you to send"? Did somebody?
Well, I have a feeling that it's happening, and I was just wondering if that's the right thing to do or not. Well, plus because because I'm gonna say this, it's gonna seem like I'm trying to make it like promotional for this show, but that's not what it's meant to be. Michael Che posted. I love Michael Che. You all know I'm the biggest SNL fan. That's a huge reason why I came to New York. But he said, you know, he was upset if people are having like African American people come on their show simply to promote their podcast, just like to have these kinds of conversations. And he's like, well, like, don't use us for your gain. kind of thing. And I totally understand that point of view. But how do you guys feel about that point of view? Even though you're on this show, you are helping me out by being on it. But what is your response to that? I guess. Like
Wait, he said don't. So wait, can you explain what he did one more time?
Sure. Let me get up. Let me get his post up. I think it's still there. 7. This is very impromptu. But okay, I'm tired of white comics. This is comics using the coattails of Black comics just to position themselves to tell white audiences more about us. Us is in quotes. You're not helping us. You're helping your podcast. How come every Black friend they mention can help their career? You're not an N-word expert because you know rappers. Clown. Yeah. Which I thought that was hysterical. It's true. A lot of people are gaining from this. But how can we have the conversation on the platform by still leveling it? How can we have these conversations without making people upset? Because we want to do the
everybody's triggered very differently.
Yeah.
It's going to be different from person to person. I was just talking to one of my friends about this the other day because one of my friends, she's the kind of person, like if you ran into her and tried to or if she had to say something to you rather about like the situation, she wasn't happy. Like she's not going to be very merciful in the way she talks about it. But I'm always pretty open to having conversations, and I think the best thing to do is just to always make your intentions clear. And just look, I'm learning and I want to understand, and I think that's the most comforting thing that I can hear from white people that are my friends. They really want to understand. And just keeping an open mind. And when sometimes white people want to debate your experience, don't do that.
It's a movie, to bring it back. I think we kind of lost feel of that. We did, but it's okay. Mari never they never established that they wanted to understand things. They just did things, because that's just how a normal conversation flows. And sometimes that anger, can either help the situation or not help the situation. So I think, and I think Gen Z's, but maybe if this movie was made today, there would be more of a, just more of that foundation in the conversation to say look, I don't know this. I acknowledge history and I want to help and I want to make it better. You have to establish that first. And I think a lot of young people are doing that better.
Yeah. I think, to Erika's point too, I was thinking about even the movie, it's both sides have to understand of how a person is raised, because even Piper, her dad's a congressman and she understands the struggle. She understands what's going on when it comes to Black people. But on the other side, if she's growing up, tell me her name again, Mom. How do you say her name again? I always get Mari, right?
Yeah.
All right, there we go. Yeah. So Mari, she's grown up in South Africa, and she's literally just learning that, Black people, they're servants, they're low, in the low class. These are things that she was raised on. So whenever I encounter people that kind of have that mentality, I don't just jump on them, because I understand that, wait a second, people are not just born racist. Mm-hmm. It had to come from somewhere. There's generations of this going on. So even after our great grandfathers and all that have passed on, the mentality just goes from one kid to the next, so I have to at least be sensitive when it comes to me speaking to them and at least helping to educate them when it comes to these issues, Mm-hmm. But that's the thing, you have to be willing to realize what's wrong is wrong, but also help to make sure that it doesn't continue, in terms of racism. So
yeah, definitely. Lydia?
Yeah, I think Devonte made a really interesting point. I feel like we can stop that curve. You know what I mean? Like we can come from a family that are very conservative, very, one-sided, narrow-minded, and we can, racism is learned, right? We don't just get out, the womb thinking, oh, I don't like these type of people or those type of people. You know what I mean? We learn it from somewhere. So I feel like we should take the responsibility and like really sit down and think to ourselves, okay, this is how I think. Why do I think this way? Do I want to think this way? Is there something I can do to change? All right. Start to learn different things, start to read up on things, start to watch documentaries. You can change the way you think. There's so many opportunities to learn. Knowledge is power. Like I know I say that a lot, but like take the responsibility to teach yourself new things, because if you want to stop that curve, if you want to make sure that your kids and your grandkids don't grow up racist, like your parents or your grandparents or your great-great-grandparents taught you, because that's just how their way of life was, you can do it. You know what I mean? So I feel like it's really important for white people and non-Black people of color to also do that. You know what I mean? Because it's like, personally, like being Hispanic and stuff like that, I know that there's so much anti-Blackness in our community. There's so much of that. So I feel like taking the time to correct your family, your friends in public and in private is really important, because you're not going to get like a golden token correcting, your parents when you're at home. But you want to make sure that you do it because you want to tell them like, hey, this is not okay. There's so much, anti-Blackness in our community. Like we are in this together. You know what I mean? There is no benefit in you fighting another minority. You know what I mean? So just really take into account what you're doing and how you're doing it, and just taking a whole bunch of knowledge.
Yeah, and just taking it for what it is, and not trying to project and think, oh, well, this is a bigger problem. Take it one situation at a time, and that's hopefully how we can change it. And I think like with this movie, because we all talked about this before even on the air, we remember the movie, but we forgot, like, we remember how we feel about the movie, but we forgot that it was a true story. We forgot what actually happened. We forgot that it was about like a congressman and the work that he did to better the world. I did not realize that until yesterday when I rewatched it. So I think it's better, of course, if we start everybody young. You can absolutely go back to old things or read new things now to educate ourselves, and that's basically probably fix everything. I would hope. Yeah. So we. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no. Like I think you made another point too. Like even when you go inside schools, I was saying that sometimes like there's an anger there because sometimes we assume that like all white people are the same or all Spanish people are the same. Like, oh, they're just automatically the enemy. And I just like you said, like always think about it case by case, not assuming like just because it's someone of a different complexion than you or a different culture that they're trying to be racist or trying to oppress you. There's always like keeping an open mind, Of course.
Yeah, one individual thing. Yeah. And thank you for that. But also there are so many people, and we had a conversation yesterday. Devonte hosted a really wonderful Zoom call. And but one person who responded to me said, well, but not everyone's gonna think, not everyone's gonna try to oppress you because of a different race either. So it's like you never know. It's like, don't assume anything. Just treat someone as a human being, use humor if you can. Anything that can help. But yeah, so we are coming to the end of the show. We have a minute left. Is there any final thoughts that anybody wants to say?
Well, I do want to say, because I'm going to keep saying it because I've been saying it, I love this platform. I love that you're using this to talk about really important issues. It's really a blessing. It is a great thing that you're doing. And I'm hoping for continued success with your podcast, and thank you again for using the space. You didn't have to do it, but you did, and that really means a lot.
Thank you, Erika, and thank you for coming on. That's what means the most. Like you guys showed up, so thank you.
Yeah, I completely agree. Thank you so much. I love what you're doing. Like I like the fact that you really reached out and you're like, I want to do something about this. So yeah, thank you so much. You're coming from an amazing place, and I love it.
Thanks, Lydia. Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate you guys so much. And I know I deviated from the conversation. I think we can continue with another one. But yeah, thank you all so much for being on the show, for everyone watching, all 7 of you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Hopefully more people watch when I post it later. But yeah, so everyone have a wonderful day. Let's do our best every day to help each other out.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much,
Tia.
Tia.
All right, thanks for having us.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Stay safe.
Take care, guys.
Bye.